Using the four directions goes back quite a long ways in terms of people within different civilizations understanding and mastering creation here on Earth and the process of building things together, as well as their own personal individuation. And this is also called elementary magic, higher planetary magic. It is the sacred medicine wheel. It is the cardinal cross. It is the four quadrants within the astrological chart, which are based on 12 constellations. And those constellations can be considered as gates. Each gate contains within it lessons and challenges that once accomplished, we can obtain a key which allows us to enter the following gate, expanding ourselves into greater and greater environments, ascending and evolving. So I wanted to put together this video to assist others as well in having a visual, having a general idea about how these gates are used, and really beginning to understand the value in them, the value in mastering the four elements, and how all of this plays out in terms of working on ourselves and then being able to connect within a tribe and co-creating on the larger stage. So I hope you enjoy this video, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you'd like to book a session, you can do so at inspiringplayfulevolutions.com under Systems of Gnosis. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, I put together a video to describe how to use the astrological chart to build routine, ritual, structure, foundation. And this whole kind of exploration came about because I have Pisces in the 6th house, and these two energies are completely opposite. Actually, everything in my chart is opposite. And so constantly my job is like bringing balance to all of these different elements. And so I started exploring this because I thought it was really just well laid out as a blueprint for how we can have a really strong foundation and a really strong structure in our life in order to build all these more exalted manifestations and things that we want to bring in. Goals that we have and things that we're striving for. So I'm going to show you the, I'm just going to screen share, and I'm going to show you just the basic chart, right? And let me open this up so you can see it even clearer. We have Aries, and okay, we have Aries, right, which is the self. And if we use this kind of as a clock or as a spiral, this is us dancing with the cosmos and the schedule and the routine and the foundation and the rituals and everything in order that it needs to be expressed is here. Okay, it's very logical and very well laid out. And so Aries, right? And let me just say that you cannot get to these next gates. Like, we're starting from Aries and we're going to Pisces. And we can't get to the next gate unless we fulfill the necessities and what is necessary within that gate that we're working in. And they have to layer on top of each other. So one fulfilling all of the criteria necessary within each constellation, within each house, allows us to enter the second one successfully, and then so on and so forth. So Aries is about the physical body. I'm going to go through them quickly, but as you explore each constellation and their meanings, you can come up with even greater connections in regards to this and what it means to use the chart to build a strong foundation for yourself. So Aries is everything to do with the personal identity. It's the selfhood. It is the physical body. And this is where it starts. We're born into the world and we're really not picking up on much, and we just have the physical body. And so this represents how the first step to building a strong foundation is the actual physical body. This is why people get into strength building and bodybuilding and then promote it so much, because they know the value in what it is to have a strong physical body, because it is the base, it is the foundation. When you really understand this, when you really see it for what it is, you know that you can't bypass it, right? If your body is weak, then you can build up and you can go through these other gates, but it's not going to be solid. And the foundation isn't going to be firm, and then there's going to be problems, cracks in the foundation, and so on and so forth. If you're a builder. So Aries, the physical body, right? Everything to do with the physical body, with strengthening it, with becoming agile. Have your activity. Okay, every day you have to have the physical body involved. You work out the physical body, then you know inherently that you're going to be able to move into these other gates. And so the second gate is Taurus. Taurus has everything to do with the senses. It has to do with our sensual connection to the world. It also has to do with our values. And I'm going to bring this in on a more physical level for building the foundation. Yes, our values are going to come into play, but more as we cycle around the evolution of our chart, things become more refined. And so we move from sensuality to really like these spiritual values and, worldly values. But just on a base level, Taurus is our physical sensations. And so it's what we eat, right? It's like taste and smell, and it's what we're putting into our body. So we have Aries, which is building the body, building the strength, being active, and actively actively generating more strength and to hold us up. And then you have the senses where we're feeding, right? We need good smells. We need to nourish ourselves with good smells, with good foods, with good tastes. The senses is also, everything to do with our sleep, right? How do we wake up in the morning? What kind of music do we listen to, right? It's a lot to do with the fulfilling the senses. And so, Aries is ensuring that the body is strong. Taurus is fulfilling the senses. And all of these are gates. So if you don't properly attend to what is in those signs, then you will not be able to move into the next gate efficiently and effectively. Okay. And so once you really understand this, it's magic. Okay. This is total elemental magic. And so as you go from Taurus and the senses, you move into Gemini. And Gemini has everything to do with our mental relationship to self. So we have the physical body, Aries and Taurus, because the physical body is very connected to our senses and our sensuality. And then we have Gemini, which is moving into the mind. And Gemini has everything to do with how we talk to ourselves. How do you talk to yourself? What are the words that you use when you wake up, when you go to sleep? When you're happy, when you're sad, when you're in an argument, whatever the case, what kind of words, right? When you're just sitting there, what's going through your mind? This is crucial. This is a really important gate because it fulfills the last one of the first quadrant. Okay. And so in order to get into Cancer, where you're moving from the self more into the home, the family environment, where you begin to develop skills not just related so much to like taking care of your own physical body and your own mental body. And once you can do that, and you know, we're constantly spiraling around and around and around and around. So it's not like you only have one chance to go through each gate. You're constantly given an opportunity to move through each gate. And we are effectively spiraling through life. And as we spiral, we keep on spiraling up, as I like to say, and we come back to the same spots, but with new eyes, with new lenses of perception, with new knowledge, with new wisdom. And so we're always leveling up. Going from Gemini, mastering the mind, at 45 might be very different than at 8 years old, right? Or 7 years old. But with every stage, we're refining that. And so we're going from Gemini to Cancer into the next quadrant, right? So the first quadrant is self and the body. And then the next quadrant is like self and the home and the immediate environment. What we did in the first quadrant, what that manifests, shows up in Cancer. The first part of that quadrant, of the second quadrant, is our emotions. It's going to show up in how we feel emotionally. And it's going to show up in our immediate environment. You know, look around, what's around you. Everything that's around you is a product of what was in the first quadrant and how you interacted with those sectors of development, the body, right? The senses, the mind. And so in Cancer, we feel the consequences of the first quadrant and those first three signs. Cancer, being the emotions, then needs to be perfected. And sometimes we have to just cycle back around, right? We're constantly, like some people, you know, they stay in the first 3, 4, 5, 6, right? It depends on your chart and it depends where you're going. But if you are working in, you know, especially if you have a lot of your planets in the upper quadrants and the two upper quadrants, you're dealing with things on a larger scale. You're dealing with the world on a larger scale. You are producing material that is reaching, that has a further reach. And so you need to be able to, have this foundation really strong so that your sun in Capricorn in the 10th house, right, is shining bright. So Cancer, the emotions, it's the connection to the mother, but it's also the connection to the father. And, you know, families living together can see this when they have, you know, when they master like the Gemini, like the words, the thoughts, you know, because they're in a good state physically with themselves and they're taking care of themselves on a physical level, eating properly, sleeping properly, like everything happens here. Then whoop, what happens in the home, in the immediate environment? Things are fun, right? Then we go into Leo. People can start being creative. People can start having fun. And everything follows suit. So once we can start relaxing because we've taken care of the first quadrant, our emotions begin to create the magic so that we can be creative in the world. And boom, Leo appears. And Leo's like, let's play, let's have fun, let's be creative, let's come up with a new solution for this, or let's just express ourselves and have that ripple out into the world. And then we hit the 6th house, which is Virgo, right? So we start to perfect. We start to go into perfection mode, and the 6th house is work. So everything that we're, all these other gates that we're working through then perfect themselves in Virgo. And then we can start using that house to manifest back into the 1st house, because we're constantly having to take care of this, the foundation. Can't get away from it. We can't. It is simply a natural law. And so with our work, this is where you know, it will dictate what's happening in these previous houses, and these previous constellations are going to dictate what's going to happen with your work, you know, how you're going to make your money, whether your work's going to be creative or whether it's going to be, you know, very analytical or very physical, right? There's mastery in every single domain. So how the Aries, Taurus, and Gemini ripple over and create the emotion and create the creativity, then allow the person to start actually making a living with that, shows up all here. First two quadrants in the first six constellations. So that foundation is necessary, and you can just look simply at these first two quadrants and really get an idea about how you're mastering these. And, you know, with this lens of perception on, you can see, oh, well, you know, yeah, my emotions are whatever, you know, haywire, or just like, you know, emotionally, I'm disrupted all the time. So it affects my creativity, and then it affects my work or my mind. My mind is you know, is not in a healthy state, and so then it affects my emotions, right? So you could just see it. It's so simple once you look at the chart and see it for what it is. So then you have moving into these higher realms. They're not necessarily, you know, but you can live your whole life just in these first six houses. But, you know, I think everyone cycles through, no matter what, we're kind of forced, but not everyone is necessarily aware of their impact on these higher houses. And it depends really on their astrological chart. Some people are just more focused, right? If they have their sun, their moon, their Venus and Mars, like all within the first four houses, then their focus is going to be different. And that is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everyone is going to be concerned with what's happening on the world stage. We have to understand that this is just based off of how they are hardwired. And some people are only concerned with what's happening on the larger scale, and then they tend to forget these first other houses. And so if you have a lot of really strong placements with your sun, your moon, you know, Venus, Mars, Mercury, all of this in the last quadrant, I think you're more likely to forget about taking care of what's happening in the first quadrant. So when I'm working with people, I also look at all of this and I superimpose their chart onto just the basic chart to kind of see, you know, where challenges might be for them in specifically. So, yeah, so if you have a lot of, you know, primary planets in the last quadrant, you definitely 100% need to take care of the first quadrant, way more than someone who's only moving between the first and the second quadrant in this lifetime, in terms of the spiral and the dance that they're having with the universe. Going from there, Libra is where we have done all this work in the first and second quadrant with ourselves, our physical body, you know, our emotions, our creativity, our work. And it's when we start to branch out, and it's then becomes the dance of the self with the other being like the you know, the person outside of the home. It could be the partner, the boss, you know, the coworkers, the people that you're involved in projects with, your mentors, your, you know, just people outside of you. And this is where we can see how well we can negotiate with the outside world. If we can't negotiate with the outside world, we might want to go back and start looking at what's going on in these lower quadrants. Am I doing the physical work? Am I pleasing and nourishing my senses, right? What's my self-talk? Because if you're not able to negotiate with the outside world, there's a gate that, you know, you got through, but you didn't really properly get the key to the gate, to the next gate. You know, you're just moving through. We want to get the keys We don't just want to be able to move into that space. So anyone can move into the space, but then are you able to actually dance? So Libra, can we negotiate our relationships with the outside world? This is going to be very different for everybody. Everybody has had a whole set of different experiences from childhood all the way up to adulthood. There's a lot involved in this. And but having the foundation of these first two quadrants and really understanding what that is, and then integrating this into your life. You know, you don't have to just kind of come up with like every day be struggling with like, oh, you know, how do I do this? How do I set up my schedule? How to just look at these and say, okay, I gotta take care of my body, I gotta take care of my senses, I gotta take care of my mind. I got to take, you know, which will lead to the emotions and the creativity. Second quadrant is kind of like, it follows suit with the first. So it's really the first quadrant that dictates most of the stuff, the food. We're just responding constantly to our own biology. And so Libra, how we negotiate with the world, is the next step, leading to Scorpio. And Scorpio is basically, after we've learned to negotiate well, we are going to be negotiating or interacting with the underbelly of our own psychology, with the underbelly of society, of institutions, right? We don't jump right away to Capricorn and Aquarius, where we're dealing with the institution itself. We're dealing with the underbelly in Scorpio, right? And we're also dealing with our needs, our deeper needs regarding the other. So everything to do with our sexuality, it is a base need. We can look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and this also falls well into how this all plays in. But the astrological chart, I think, is even better. And so we're dealing with the underbelly of the institutions. We're interacting with deeper psychological needs at this stage. And we're also dealing with more intimacy, deeper intimacy, physical intimacy. Which all lead us to Sagittarius, the 9th house, which is everything to do with higher learning. And it's where, if we've mastered these foundational houses, we can then begin to reach out and start, you know, traveling, foreign travel, higher learning, right? We want to kind of, you know, potentially start to, it could be related to university, right? Studying on that higher level, or joining some sort of organization that is definitely, you know, bigger than what's in your local community. And so how well we're going to do in any of these depends on what's going on in these first two quadrants. Okay, and a trick to see how things are interplaying is you look at the opposite. If you're not, for example, taking care of the self on a physical level, you might not feel confident, right, when interacting with other people. And you might have difficulties negotiating your relationships. Or if you're not taking care of your physical senses, nourishing yourself on a physical level, nourishing yourself, your relationship to you, then you might have trouble doing that in terms of intimacy with others. And then in terms of your self-talk and mentally, like, you know, what's going on in your own education without how you're educating yourself, right? Without anything else in the world, will determine what's happening in the 9th house. So everything's a mirror image of itself. That's why when we look around in the internet, or we look around and interact with people in the world, it's like everybody's mirroring back to us it's our own experience, but that's the world of duality, right? And so it's our own experience, but it's like as above, so below. This is just the natural laws, right? And we can get into that, and it's like a whole other conversation. But basically, you can look at it that way. You can just look what's across from that specific house, and then go there and see, oh, well, I need to strengthen this if I want to excel, right? In the opposite end, whatever quadrant that is. So once we've mastered this foreign kind of higher learning, foreign travel, you know, all of these things where we're reaching up into this higher space, and it's not just local, it is starting to bridge into the global. It's not the underbelly of the institutions, Scorpio, it's the front of the institutions. And then that leads us to the 10th house, which is our legacy and our reputation, because now we are beginning to have an effect. Our manifestations are beginning to have an effect on the world stage. And again, like I said, depending on your chart, not everybody is meant to work in that area. And there's nothing that is less or more important in that regards. Because once you understand the Hermetic principles, it's like, even if you're just in your own little bubble doing stuff, you're still affecting the world stage. But for those that have strong planets in these higher quadrants, not only are they affecting the larger stage, but it is where they play. It's their playground. So whereas on the opposite end, the playground is within, right? Some people, the playground is actually literally on the larger stage. So our legacy starts to shape up and this is our true drive, like the 10th house, the midhaven is actually where our soul is on its soul mission, right? It is, in a sense, it's a combination of, you know, the drive, the soul drive that is described in the ascendant and the sun. It's a combination of everything. I would say it that way. It's a combination of all the planetary placements, and really is our soul drive. So what shows up, you know, here is going to be based on these other quadrants have been worked out, how these specifically other things have worked out: the body, the senses, the mind, the emotions, the creativity, the work, the negotiations with the external world and those people, and then the underbelly of the institutions and the intimacy and the deeper psychology and the higher learning and the foreign travel. Boom, 10th house, midhaven. So from there, we're really in the last quadrant. And the last quadrant is, you know, it's the collective unconscious as well. It is the world stage. It is the collective. You know, it's what's happening on the macro. And so the 11th house, Aquarius, you know, is everything to do with not just institutions, but like movements, right? It has to do with trends. It has to do with larger groups of consciousness, right? We're all partaking in these waves of consciousness, and we're all contributing to different waves of consciousness, right? Why is it that some of us can wake up and say, whoa, you know, I just felt that last night, there's something that, you know, moved through the reality field. And then you have another group of people that will say, you know, they don't feel anything, because they're not two separate groups partaking in different things. But you can observe that collectively these things are recognized and acknowledged, right? Certain people they're part of a certain reality, and other people are part of another reality. And we're really dabbling into this energy in Aquarius in the 11th house. And when we're expressing on that level, we're talking about collective movements and collective consciousness, you know, because we have strong planets in that house. We have to understand that our expression, you know, how we're able to interact and manage and work on that level will depend on how we master the first three quadrants. So again, everything follows suit, and it's all a gate leading to the next thing. So all of the philanthropic work is done in the 11th house. Everything to do with basically shifting the reality field, co-creating, right? Something that we want to, the best timeline for humanity. All of this is being done in the 11th house. And so the opposite of the 11th house is what? It's Leo, right? And so Leo is where our creativity lies. And it's where our loyalty, our integrity, our heart lies, right? So if your heart's not on, you can't participate in creating collective consciousness, in creating the best timeline. And I don't want to get too caught up in the lingo here because we'll get lost in syntax, but, you know, partaking on this larger scale in co-creation requires the heart to be on. Okay, so just remember that everything can be seen from its opposite and then understood more clearly that way. And then finally, when we're dancing and we're spiraling and we make it around to that last house, which is Pisces, this is really how well we die. You know, if you're looking at the gates, like on the larger scale, and you're looking at each house as a big chunk of, you know, how we experience life, like the quadrants, like the 4 quadrants being like, you know, infancy to adolescence, and then adolescence to adulthood, and then adulthood to old age, and then old age to death, right? Can be seen large or small, right? Because it can also be seen as days of the week. You can also look at it like 12 days. And we can also look at it like the time in a day, which is how we're bringing it back to understanding it in terms of building our schedule and routine, right? And then the interplay of understanding all of this, how we have to divvy up our day and how things are interplaying, is really where the playfulness comes in, because you can, as long as you're getting all these things done, you can do them in different ways. And that's where the fun comes in, because how one person is going to do it is not the same as how another person is going to do it. But obviously understanding yourself, understanding your chart. I'm working with Pisces in the 6th house. So it has to, you know, it's going to be fun and creative for me to build my schedule and routine. And for others, all these elements are going to be placed, you know, but some people might have it specifically written down exactly what time they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But as long as they're getting all of these, right? If you stop exercising, we know what happens. If you stop eating right, we know what happens. If you stop sleeping right, we know what happens, right? If you start going down the mental route of, you know, negative compulsive thinking about something, we know how that ends. And the first quadrant determines how everything else is unraveling. So we got to get that straight. But we can do it any way we want. And we can really enjoy and have fun with it as long as we're getting those things done. So Pisces is also our impact, like the final impact that we're leaving here. And it also has to do with the subconscious mind, and even deeper, our level of consciousness. And when we talk about ascension and we talk about, you know, all of a sudden we're ascending to these higher levels and we're able to take in more energy and then start communicating on that higher level, it's Pisces in the 12th house. It's where we're able to just have the solid foundation, right? Enough to all of a sudden culminate into a Uranian moment where there is sudden change deep within the consciousness of the soul, right? Within the consciousness of the being, and then the soul evolves. So this is happening little bit by little bit every day for everyone. And some days aren't going to have that big where you all of a sudden you're walking in another dimension. Which for those that have had that experience, it's like, okay, you know, that's intense. It's not going to be like that every day. But it can a little bit each day. And so also how we experience that, I think how well we experience those moments of elevated consciousness, those mystical, magical moments, will be determined by how healthy our physical body is, right? And how we're taking care of ourselves. And then also in regards to how well we deal with adversity. So everything boils down here, and we can see it all perfectly. It's laid out for us. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Let's see. And let me see if I can find how I juxtapose the charts on top of each other. I'm just going to have to go here quickly, pull this out. Okay. Let's see now if I go back to here and share. Okay. So as you can see, I juxtaposed the basic chart, starting with Aries on the ascendant, and my chart, my personal chart, right? And you can do this with your own. So you can see what sign, what constellation is in your first house, right? So how are you interacting with your body, right? For me, it's Libra. It's balance and justice. Like, having, for example, Aries and Aries might give you an idea about what kind of exercises would be best for you. And, how much you need to strengthen and build your body, because you might come in already with a lot of vitality. If your ascendant is already Aries, if your ascendant is Leo, right? Or Taurus or Capricorn, right? So we can look at what's in those houses already. What kind of energy is present? So by juxtaposing this, it gives me a lot of understanding about how these are playing out and how to unlock my gates. If you do book a session with me, I will help you also look at this in terms of your chart and how it plays out. So if you're stuck in one area or another, right, your creativity is stuck, we're going to go and look at what's happening in these previous gates and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to kind of show you this because if you're having trouble, thinking about it, you can just juxtapose your chart onto the basic one below. So there you have it. I'm wishing everybody a great next cycle in terms of, as we spiral back around and we're building up our schedule and our routines, to make it playful and to have fun, to enjoy it. We've all worked so hard. So many people I know have just it's just been crazy how much work we've been doing over the last 10 years regarding so much. And, depending on what kind of work you're doing, this becomes even more important, the foundation, right? Depending on what you're here doing in the world, it becomes even more critical to, what happens to you, right? That your health status, your mental health status, how much of an impact, right, you can have on the world stage, and what sort of major moves you can make in terms of, creating the timeline you want for yourself. Because a lot of people, especially right now, are not interested in participating in what's happening in society. And a lot of us have not really been, interested in it from the day we were born. But there's more and more people now that are looking like, well, how do I build life for myself? How do I build a solid foundation so that I can survive and thrive outside of the system? So this becomes more and more crucial because we have to literally build everything up, everything from the bottom up ourselves. And there are many rings of fire to go through, and ensuring that the foundation is really solid will allow us to go through these different rings of fire and to persist and to co-create and to thrive in the world. Wishing everybody a wonderful day. I will talk to you soon. All right, bye everyone. Take care.